quantitate mostly food and beverage. That didn't take that output. A little bit of some metabolism. Whereas output is 60% urine. Okay, insensible water loss down for another significant percent.
So how do you lose water through the skin if it's not sweat?
How do you do what?
Insensible losses via the skin.
Yeah, sweat is actually sensible.
It's sensible. So what's the
Water
insensible?
vapor.
Just the water vapor.
Water vapor, where you don't even see.
Okay.
Now, skin is a nice barrier against water loss, but it's not a perfect barrier.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
All right. We're going to use osmolality and osmolarity, these terms quite a bit, to express the quantity of solute dissolved within the fluid of our body. In a human being, these two terms are almost the same. For all practical purposes, it really doesn't amount to any significant difference. For instance, osmolality is the number of solute particles dissolved in 1 kilogram of solvent. Of course, that solvent would be the plasma. That plasma is mostly water, okay, but it does include other things. Okay, a kilogram of water is the same thing as a liter of water. So it's number of, you can think of it as the number of solute particles dissolved in a liter of solvent, and that liter is mostly water. Okay? I'm sorry. Let me go back. I made a mistake. The solvent is water. It does not include any other substances. So basically, osmolality is the number of solute particles dissolved in a liter of water, because that's the solvent that's present within the plasma. Osmolarity includes, again, the number of solute particles per liter of solution. A solution includes both the solvent and any other dissolved particles. So there's a slightly decreased amount of water into which the solute particles are being dissolved here when we quantitate osmolarity compared to osmolality. The differences here are insignificant. So I usually think of both of these as just the number of particles dissolved in a liter of plasma or water. Okay? For our purposes in chemistry, there's a big difference. For our purposes, there's not. Now, so when we quantitate osmolality or osmolarity, what we're doing is taking the sum total of all the solute concentrations and adding them together. And that sum is the total number of particles in a liter of fluid. Okay? So generally, normal osmolarity in the plasma is 285 to 300 what are called milliosmoles per liter. We're just quantitating the number of particles by using the term moles or millimoles. How many people here take chemistry? All right, so how many particles is a mole? O2 times 10 to the 23rd, I think. Yeah, that's Avogadro's number. So when we quantitate in moles or millimoles, what we're really saying is, okay, this is so many particles. Okay, it would be like saying if we had donuts, all right, we have a dozen donuts here. Okay, we're just using millimoles here, or milliosmoles, as a way of expressing the number of particles dissolved within a liter. If we want to get a direct measurement of osmolarity, we have to take a sample of blood and send it to a reference lab. It can take 2 or 3 days to come back, because you need special equipment. If we want to simply estimate osmolarity or osmolality, we can use a formula. Take 2 times the sodium, 10 times the glucose divided by 180, and we add them up. Then it comes very close to what would be quantitated directly. So for example, a normal serum sodium is 140. 2 times 140 is 280. Let's say for all practical purposes, the glucose concentration is 180. That makes it easy because 180 and 180 is 1. So to that 280, we'd add 10, 290. Is that a normal osmolarity? Yeah. Yeah, that's fairly normal. So if we want to quantitate osmolarity indirectly, we can use a formula. And there are some other formulas that people use. But an even simpler way is to simply look at serum sodium concentration. Normally, if we take a sample of blood, there's going to be a certain concentration of sodium in that sample of blood. It's going to be about 140 milliequivalents per liter. Okay. Sodium, we've said already, in the extracellular fluid is the major osmotic particle. It's the major solute, the solute present in greatest concentration. So as the osmolarity of plasma, the sum total of all the particle concentration changes, it's going to affect serum sodium. If, for instance, someone becomes dehydrated, where they lose mostly water, okay, then you're going to have the same quantity of sodium, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, dissolved in a smaller quantity of water. So serum sodium concentration is going to go up. We call that hypernatremia. If someone's hypernatremic, okay, really that's going to be a reflection of the fact that they're dehydrated and their overall osmolarity is increased. Because not only is the serum sodium concentration going to increase, but concentration of all the solutes. But we can use the high sodium concentration as a marker for increased osmolarity. Does this mean that the number of sodium particles in the bloodstream is increased? No, it means that there's less water within which it's dissolved. So there's a relative increase, an increase in concentration. Now, our body works hard, though, to maintain a normal serum or plasma osmolarity. Okay? This is part of homeostasis. And it does so through 2 mechanisms, thirst and ADH secretion. Okay? So, let's suppose there are osmotic changes within the bloodstream. Let's say somebody's been caught in an attic, 105-degree temperatures, post-Katrina, for several days. That patient's becoming dehydrated, particularly if they don't have access to water. Okay? So, that increase in serum osmolarity is going to be detected by osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus. And that's going to stimulate then the release of ADH from the posterior pituitary, and it's going to stimulate the thirst mechanism. So that we drink more free water and reabsorb more water from the kids. Okay? And as more water gets transferred into the bloodstream, that increased osmolarity begins to come back down toward normal. Okay? That's what happens if you start to become dehydrated. If your osmolarity begins to increase, you become thirsty. Okay. Now, look here. Volume also impacts ADH release and thirst. In fact, what we see here is that volume trumps osmolarity. It doesn't matter what the osmolarity is, okay? If there's a decrease in intravascular volume, That's going to stimulate release of ADH and thirst. Okay? For instance, if someone's been shot and they're hemorrhaging, doesn't matter that they have normal serum osmolarity. Okay? The loss of volume is going to be sensed by stretch receptors in the atrium, stretch receptors in the large veins, and that's going to send impulses up to the hypothalamus and say, okay, release ADH, activate the thirst mechanism. Okay. So, stronger stimulus than osmolarity. Everybody's seen this one already. We showed this last class. Okay. These are the factors that impact release of ADH. Increased osmolarity, which is reflected by an increased sodium concentration, or decreased blood volume or blood pressure. Both of these, this sequence of events triggers release of ADH, which improves osmolarity, and in doing so leads to a more concentrated, smaller volume urine. So let's give some examples. Let's talk about some disorders of fluid electrolytes. We'll talk about dehydration, hypotonic hydration, which is also called water intoxication, and my favorite, edema. Okay, so dehydration represents a relative water deficiency. Okay? Solute particles, including sodium, don't change. They're dissolved in a smaller quantity of volume. So patients become hypernatremic. Okay. It's caused by negative fluid balance, meaning that there's more water out than is being taken in. Okay. So it doesn't matter what the etiology is. It can be nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, sweating, diuretic abuse, water deprivation. Water deprivation in the elderly is not that uncommon. As we become more and more elderly, we become less ambulatory. And some older people depend upon others to come to their house and help them. Mm-hmm. If something happens and those people can't come, then they may not have access to water or fluid. Uncontrolled diabetes, remember the 3 Ps. Polyuria, okay, where the high glucose concentration acts as an osmotic diuretic. That can trigger dehydration. Okay? Doesn't matter what the cause, okay, the underlying mechanism is, but the patient becomes hypernatremic. Okay, they exhibit increased osmolarity, but they're dehydrated. Symptoms would include a dry mouth, increased thirst, talked about that, and oliguria. What does oliguria mean? We said this day 1. Decreased urine output. Yeah. Now sometimes people will give a definition to oliguria, like less than 300 cc's a day. Whereas anuria means no urine output. So these would be symptoms that would correlate with dehydration. Mm-hmm. Signs would be physical findings. So physical findings would include dry mucous membranes. When you have the patient stick out their tongue, typically it appears moist. If it looks parched or dry, that's consistent with dehydration. You assess neck veins. We'll talk about this. Ordinarily, if anyone were to lie flat, supine, you should be able to see their neck veins partially distended. If you do not see neck veins, that's a physical sign that reflects dehydration or loss of volume. Finally, decreased skin turgor. Decreased skin turgor. Normally, if I take a patient, let's say like JJ, and I'm going to do this just for clinical purposes, and I pinch her skin, notice how it bounces right back down. Okay? Now, if she had decreased skin turgor from dehydration, what would happen? Her skin would tend to do that. Okay, there'd be decreased recoil. So again, that would reflect dehydration.
I had a physician do that to me once, and then he explained why he was doing it.
Yeah, sometimes you just don't like a patient.
Yeah, that was ouch.
Now, if prolonged or severe enough, dehydration can lead to mental status changes. It can lead to other findings. Of course, weight loss, because you're losing water, you're losing weight. It can cause fever. That's a central effect of dehydration. In other words, it originates within the central nervous system and has mental status changes. Why? Because within the extracellular fluid, as osmolarity increases, it draws water away from cells. It pulls water out of cells, and those cells, those neurons within the central nervous system shrink. They become dehydrated, and that impacts function. So patients may become diffused, their mental status may be altered. Yeah?
So is that why they get disoriented?
Particularly the elderly. The elderly are very sensitive to problems with fluid electrolytes. They become dehydrated. If they become dehydrated, they're even more apt to exhibit mental status changes. But they're more sensitive to drugs also. You take Benadryl, it crosses the blood-brain barrier. Most of us, may get a little bit drowsy, but we don't have a real change in mental status. You give Benadryl to someone who's 80 or 90 years old, they may become confused or disoriented.
Oh.
Right. What about hypotonic hydration or water intoxication? A few years ago, there was a radio contest. It was something like hold your Wii for a Wii. A Wii was some type of gaming device. Are y'all familiar with that?
Yeah.
How many people have a Wii? They still make Wiis?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they make them differently
The
now.
Wii U. Old.
Right. But you still do the Wii?
Yeah.
You still Wii?
Still Wii.
Yeah. Well, the idea was, I guess the contestant who could drink the most amount of water without urinating after a period of time won. Well, what was happening to that particular contestant is they were becoming water intoxicated. What's going to happen to their osmolarity and their serum sodium concentrations if they're drinking a lot of water, just pure water?
It's gonna go down.
It's going to go down. In other words, you can have the same amount of sodium and other solutes, but now they're being dissolved in more water. So their relative concentrations are going to